All right. So a couple weeks ago, I was kind of browsing around on social media and looking at different stuff, and I got a crazy idea to look into Drahts or Drahthaars, and I just asked a question on a working drop page about who to contact about multi-purpose. People are using Drahts for multi-purpose, and your name kept coming up, and I'm glad to have Chad Reynolds on the podcast. How you doing, Chad?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm glad to be here. It's my first time. So
yeah. This was kind of. I mean, I never even. Your name kept popping up, and then when we made contact, I was like, "Holy cow! I need to talk to this guy," because I didn't realize all the things you were into. Kind of give us some background on who you are, where you're from, stuff like that, Chad.
all right. Well, my name's Chad Reynolds. We operate Reynolds Ranch here. It's an animal training facility out in the Southwest, and originally came from Central Florida, and then kind of got into animal training as a kid, and hunted hogs my life. I grew up doing that, and then trained dogs in the military. And then when I got out of the military, I wanted to pursue it some more. While I was in the military, I did competitive bite work, PSA and American Schützen and stuff like that, French ring a little bit.
And, okay, I got to stop you right there because we got last week we had Ariel on last week, and she is also a former military dog handler, and they were using that acronym PSA. So go ahead and tell us what that is before we get too far along.
Okay. Yeah. PSA is a Protection Sport Association. There's a few different American bite sport associations. There's like Schützen, and that's a German system. And there's French Ring, which is French Ring, of course. And they have Mondio, which is a little bit smaller. But then they have PSA, and it's kind of one of the bigger American, sport protection systems. And it's grown huge. Jerry Bradshaw, Joe Morris, and I forget the third gentleman, created it many, many years ago. And it's in Canada now and all around the world. I think they have a club in China, and it's really growing. So now it's not only Americans doing French and German bite sports in the States, but now we actually have other countries doing our bite sports now, which is unique.
Yeah,
that's what PSA is. It's known for suit work, where everybody's wearing the full bite suit, not just the sleeve on the arm. And we have a real powerful courage test where the decoy, that's the bad guy wearing the suit, and the dog will actually run at each other as fast as they can. And in some other bite sports, it's all lateral motion, so left and right, or at the last second they stop chasing, running forward and back up. And as you can imagine, to a dog, any kind of lateral or retreating motions all prey. So it's a little bit easier to overcome. Now they have other aspects of their sports that make it just as difficult, or whatever you're into. But something that makes PSA unique is the decoy is running right down the dog's throat, so you get these like matrix style impacts where the dog and the decoy spin around each other. And PSA, I believe right now is the only sport to actually require the hidden sleeve, so a sleeve that is not visible,
not a full jute sleeve.
It's really neat.
Well, I'm gonna let you and Heath geek out on that stuff here in a couple weeks. Or in the near future, but have you listened to Heath's podcast much yet?
I am green to the podcast. I've just been getting into them now, to be honest. So I may have and just don't know yet, because I'm kind of just flooded. I'm spoiled for choice right now. I'm late to the party, and kind of keep my nose down and mess with the dogs and everything.
Well, you're busy, man.
Oh, very. Very, very busy. So not yet, but and I might have. So I really can't give you a solid answer on that.
Right. I hear you. Well, the reason I wanted to talk to you is not about the training side. Heath Hyatt runs a show on Wednesday for us called The Journey, and he takes some real deep dives into neuroscience and how dogs' noses work, and crossover transferable training skills from other working dog groups to incorporate into our hounds. And that's really what led me to you, was because I'm seeing these photos and different stuff on social media of you hunting, and then I find out you're a professional dog trainer and you do PSA work and all this high performance type stuff. So I wanted to talk to you about that very unique breed, though, that we're going to get to that in the Drahts, because it is something that's unique, and we're trying to expose all of these different working breeds and find out what they're doing. So what are you doing these days besides, give us like 2 minutes or 3 minutes of what you do for a living, and then I want to take a deep dive into hunting.
Oh, okay. We have a number of employees out here that works at our company, the Reynolds Ranch LLC, and we do all types of animal training. Just
like
about
circus
everything.
monkeys.
We've done them. We've done them. We've done not a circus monkey, but another. What's funny is
I want a coon hunting monkey.
I've joked about getting a monkey to help me with my squirrel hawking back when I lived in the Southeast. We'd hunt squirrels with red-tailed hawks and tree dogs, feists and yag terriers, and they'd always hide in the nest when the bird wasn't looking. And I've always joked about getting a monkey and training him to go up there and slap the nest to get the squirrel to pop out so the hawk could catch it, but never done it. But we train all types of animals out here. We do sporting dogs, gun dogs, retrievers and stuff, of course, as well. But all types. We mess with birds, of course, we have falconry, but a little bit of everything, really. Depending on what contract we have, then we trained animals for some movies and the like. So just to look, it sounds really generic when you say we're animal trainers. They're like, oh, okay, so you train gun dogs, which is very complicated and hard. But we do that maybe as well as our competitors, and then we do a bunch of other stuff as well. So birds, bears, reptiles, whatever.
Yeah, you train reptiles?
Yeah, you can train them to perform in a certain way. Like I said, movies and the like, if they need to walk from here to there and stop, and they're not doing it for anything that you would see in a show or on film. They're doing it for food or some other type of reinforcement.
Right.
But it's just,
well, back in law enforcement training and military training too, you talk about that reptilian brain and how we as people revert back to that in stressful situations a lot of times, and I used to do a piece on that. So it kind of amazed me when you said you train reptiles. That's that's a special talent. I'm going to tell you right now.
They can be easy to manipulate. They're simple-minded sometimes, but them and birds, they can be what some folks would consider simple-minded. They don't have a lot of extra stuff rattling around in there, but in other ways, it's easy to manipulate them that way, though, because they're single-minded. It's nourishment or sustenance, food, water, security, and reproduction, and it's one of those three 24/7. That's it. Once you fill one, then they're thinking about the other. So
I got to stop, or I'm gonna start geeking out on training stuff and asking you to overlay that onto how our dogs learn and how we raise kids and all kinds of stuff. So let's talk about hunting, because you do a lot of hunting, and I don't even know where to start, Chad, because I've seen photos and videos with everything from terriers to side hounds to and then you incorporate your falconry into it, and then you're chasing big game with Drahts. And so what don't you do?
Sled pull, weight pull. That's
okay.
about it, really.
Yeah.
I'm a certified police canine instructor, so I've done narc, cadaver, bomb, man trailing. I've done side hounds for jackrabbits, side hounds for coyotes, side hounds in conjunction with falconry, bite dogs, competitive bite dogs. And of course, competitive obedience and everything that goes along with that. Terrier work, earth digging, barn busting, pointer dogs, gun dogs, as in retrieving, big game hounds, so bear, lion, bobcat. I think I'm missing some stuff, but that's about what we have going right now, at least. Yeah. Those are the things we're doing now.
Right. Yeah, and when I started talking to you, I was like, how are we going to condense this into one episode? So I'm trying to convince you to do multiple episodes here, but I really want to drill down onto that breed of dog that drew my attention to you, and that is with the Drahts. So explain to us first. Let's just start off with the breed and what that breed is, and I've got some questions about it. But can you give us some history and pronounce the name properly? Because I'm not, I promise.
Like most things, I'm a Yag Terrier guy before I was a Drahthaar guy, and they have the same kind of thing with the names. They have what the originating country calls it, what kind of, I don't know. The
hillbillies like me call it.
Well, there's an in-between. There's the folks that are Americanized but want to call it something close to what the originating country calls it. And then there's the hillbilly terminology. And like with Yags, it goes from Jags to Yags, like kind of like Jägermeister. Yags is what in between. And then the actual originating country calls it a Yak Terrier. Well, with the Drahts, it's a Drahthaar. There's like an extra T in there that we drop as Americans, but there's a Drahthaar, and there's some accent that goes along with it, so I might not even be hitting that just perfect, but that is the closest. And then Drahthaar is what a lot of folks call it, and then going more hillbilly would be Drahthaar, so they're adding another thing in there, but just call them Drahts, I guess, or DD. It works whenever you're typing it, But that's how you say the name. And
hey, we're proud of hillbillies back here. So that's not a slight against. Yeah,
that's me too. So depending on what company I'm with, I may bleed into one of those various titles. One of the various names depending on what I'm talking about. But I call them Drahthaars. But they're really neat. They're a breed, kind of like a combination breed. They were put together with 4 different dogs originally, I believe in the early 1900s in Germany, of course. So it's supposed to be a dog that can perform everywhere, in the forest, in the field, and water, and just cover all the bases in Germany. They put the Pointing Griffon, the Pulley Pointer, a Deutsch-Drahthaar, which is short hair, so a German short hair, just their version, and then I'm gonna mangle this, a stickle hair, and I'm not entirely certain if that breed
is stickle or is it stickle.
There you go. That's I could get my point across on that breed. I don't know if I can say it perfect, but I get my point across. But those 4 breeds originally made it up, in the to kind of be an all-encompassing, versatile type breed.
Go through it again, because I might have missed. Was there a Sen Hound in there somewhere?
That's what the stickle hair is. Or stickle, hair is. It was like a long-haired hound. Like if you research it, that's what it's considered as a hound. And I don't believe it's still like a dominant breed anymore. It's kind of maybe watered away. Maybe it got absorbed up into the Drahts, But that was one of the originating breeds back in the early 1900s. And then the other 3 are various forms of, pointing breed, short and or long hair. And they actually go into that a lot if you really, drill down into it, because it is essentially it started as a cross, like all pure breeds, and now they're very proud of it being a pure breed and don't like the cross ever, But originally it was a cross, and if you drill down into the pedigrees, or the Anentafel, the way they say it, they'll have mother lines, to like basically where this breeds start mainly, this dog's mother line is the Drahthaar, this one's the Griffon or Pulley Pointer, and kind of, so if you get any kind of throwback or something like that, or at least kind of where some of the more dominant traits come from. But that's originally where it came from, was those 4: the German short hair, which is Deutsch-Drahthaar, as they call it, and then the Pointing Griffon, the Pulley Pointer, and then the stickle hair. And then that's what they started with. At least the more dominant ones. There might be some others that were dabbled in there a little bit, but those are the main ones that I know of. And so now we got what we got here, but it's a breed based around the testing system, which is got its pros and cons.
Hang on to that thought. Hang on to that thought. And I want to talk about that mother line topic that you brought up.
Mm-hmm.
So within the Drahthaar breed, then you can go back and look at the mother line and find out if it was heavier in bird hunting or if it was heavier on scent work or what, and then narrow your search down within the breed. Is that what you were saying?
You can. I like nose. That's the most important to me. I can force fetch an iguana if I want to, so I could definitely force fetch any kind of dog that has any kind of drive. Yeah. So the nose, that's a thing that you can develop it, but you can't train it. If it's not there, you're not going to work with it. So the fetching, even though these Drahts they're really natural fetchers. I mean, it's incredible how much they like to specifically deliver. You can almost see them smile when they put something in your hand. But the most important thing to me is searching and nose, and everybody has their own opinions on what, but I think, in my opinion, the Kurtzar, the short hair, a specific blend of that has contributed a lot of nose, a lot of hunt, big running, very, very busy. And so that's what's most important to me. Nowadays, we're so far from that, it can kind of, I don't think it weighs in as much as it used to, just like a lot of dogs now, it's supposed to be a full package, but there are some lines that, they point well, but man, there's some of every time they go to the trials, they're, the dogs just take the retrieving really, really well. Or this one points outstanding, but, he can track and always meets the standard on tracking. But, this dog is just, you can, throw a stick in the air and it's going to turn into a pointing dog, so that's kind of some of the stuff you look for. So I think nowadays you're mainly looking for the breeder, the yard, and their reputation for what they produce. But that is another tool. The mother line aspect of it is another tool to kind of find out, like, okay, well, where did this get started? Where are we coming from all the way back? So that's just,
well, the traditional American hound breeds have and hunters have done the same thing. You look at the ongoing debate, big game bred versus coon hound bred type dogs. And a lot of people think that, and feel and believe, they believe, and I can't discount all of it, but a dog or a puppy that comes from a long line of dogs that were specifically bred to catch bear are going to make better bear dogs than they will coon dogs. So
absolutely,
that's what I was curious about the Drahts, whether or not you could trace that back and find our equivalent to big game bred or dry ground bred or coon dog bred or if you could do that within the Drahts as well.
Kind of. Now, I love the way the Americans have produced some of our, hound dogs, our coon hounds, and our dry land big game dogs. I'll argue with anybody on the planet that we have some of the best noses on earth, but we've done that through, Houndsmen's meticulous breeding and commitment to only breeding the best and not just being in love with old copper and breeding copper because, it makes me happy, but picking the best and going to the best and going to the best. So it's produced our hounds, and we have amazing hounds that I'd put on in competition with any country on the planet. But one of the things that it can show that, because if it's been like a deer dog, for example, I can comment on exactly what you said. I tried to run coyotes with deer dogs back in Louisiana, and that was one of the few states that you can still run deer with, running hounds.
Right.
And I did it. I succeeded at it. But I was always trying to focus on this, work on this. And the whole time I got them interested. I was doing different techniques to try and build prey towards that odor, and using it as a stimulus to work. And they did it. They did well at it. And then there was one day I shot a deer. It was like deer season, and they're all over the place in Louisiana. So I killed an antlerless and had it in the back of my truck, and all these pups that I've been struggling to get to chase the coyotes. And they were doing it. We were having success. when they smelled the deer, they went nuts. Deer was in their DNA. They were slobbering at the mouth. They didn't even know what to do with the odor. They started foaming up and screaming at the back of my truck. And what I did is I had a coyote drag. I had freshly killed a coyote and drug it and had some, more experienced dogs and some younger pups. And I was trying to have the younger pups work with the finished dogs to do it. And those pups smelled the deer, and that's all they wanted. And they were crazy for it. So it's in there. I can't quite put my finger on it, but it's in their DNA. Certain prey species are in their DNA. And I'd be a fool if I said it. I knew what it was. I got some assumptions. I don't even know if I want to talk about them right now because they're unrefined, but it's a fact. That is a fact. I have seen it loud and clear where I have been struggling for weeks and making success only to have them smell a dead deer and absolutely lose their mind, So, but with the
That's
Drahts,
amazing.
I guess I got to talking on that, but with the Drahts,
no, that's good.
Testing has hammered them in so much. So you do get, I don't want to misspeak here. You do get some lines that, like, hey, they do everything well, but they're really good at the tracking, or they do everything well, but they're really good at the, but it kind of has eliminated some of the, like if you look at it a wheat field, there's some very few short and tall strands of wheat. They've all been cropped off, and with the Drahts, that's mainly one of the reasons we go there is because they have a type and you're pretty much going to get what you're after there. So there isn't as much variation, but it is still there a little bit.
Is the number of Drahts in the United States or worldwide big enough, or is the gene pool big enough to be selective? If I wanted to do blood tracking, and we'll talk about some of the different issues or some of the different uses, but if I had a specific use, is the gene pool big enough that I can select a line from the breed to fit that need?
Oh, absolutely. And that's one of the cool parts of the testing system. You can't talk about the Drahthaars without talking about the testing system. And I know you got some questions for later.
Let's just dive into it now. Let's just get it out of the way.
Because of the testing system, they're graded on their nose, their search, their point. They're like, they break it down. There's a big score sheet, and that you can, if you do good on this, you get a multiplier and adds more points. And it's very complicated, but very accurate. And I love the product that it produces. I have some things that I don't totally like about it, but the finished product that comes from it is undeniable. So just because I may have some aspects of it that I might temporarily get in the way of me being a hunter, if I want to commit to the testing system, at the end of the day, if you do them, your dog is going to be better. And the product that comes out of the testing and all the things that go into it, it's undeniable. It's an incredible product that they make. But because of the testing system, you can see, all right, how this dog score on nose on this date? How did it score on nose on this date? Did it point? All right, it was, where did they do the trial? How did they perform on the rabbit track? I got a young age before they're a year old, really. They have to perform the first test, and it's a track, a cottontail or a jackrabbit track, live hunting situation where the judges are there, and there's like 15 people or so all walking with their dogs out in the field, and there's one guy on deck, and there's a rabbit. The judge sees it, marks the track that he went, and they call over person A with his dog, and they put him on the track, and then the dog's graded on how he pursues that. And out here in the West, when half the tracking is on a rock, that's right. It's kind of complicated. And so you could say, all right, this dog did extremely well in a hayfield up in Maine, or this dog did extremely well on a bunch of rocks out in a canyon somewhere. But then you could say, all right, well, I don't really like the pointing here. So you could look at all these test papers and see, like, heck, out of 10 points, you get 1 through 10, and then you can actually get 11 or a 12 in these different sections of the testing. But if you have to do better than average. Like if it's the rabbit track, you can get, you can run the track and the dog could run it perfect and get a 10 points, but in order to get 11 or 12, that rabbit would have to cross back and forth through barbed wire. So the dog's following the track has to cross barbed wire, cross back, and then run across the road. These things that we all know are more difficult, but you can look back and say, hey, for 12 generations, every breeding parent on this line has got an 11 on track.
Let's peel it back. Let's boil it down a little bit more. Let's talk about the individual categories that a Draht has to be certified in. Also, we'll talk about what the scoring system is, and ultimately, I want to get to why in the world you picked a Draht to start
It's a funny
hunting big
story.
game. Let's stay on the scoring system right now. And first off, I want to ask you this question: for registration of a Draht, do they have to pass certain tests?
100%. And that's something. Gosh, where to start on that? I have a Draht now that came out of certified, approved breeding Drahthaars. But by the time I got him, he was too old to complete the testing. They don't just have to pass it. They have to pass it by a certain date, on age, basically. Mm-hmm. And when I got my dog Haggis, he was too old to compete or even test. But he's considered an unpapered Drahthaar. He is the breeding. He's got the tattoo in his ear, the microchip, the whole bit. He came from approved Drahthaar parents, but he really isn't. There might be some date on there, but to me, he really isn't a Drahthaar until he passes the tests. He just came from Drahthaars.
Okay.
So now I've had 2 pups that I've raised, and I've had some other ones come through. I've only been fooling with them for like 4 or 5 years or so now, but they have the testing system. Like for the first test is called the VJP, and that's what they have to have, their first test, the puppy test, and that's considered a natural abilities test. The main testing parts are the track, and that's here in the States we use hare or a jackrabbit, and I think that you can use cottontail as well, like on the East Coast. And then they're drated on that track, and that's a big one. And then the use of nose. Now they use that. They check that when the dog's just searching out in an empty field. That's one of the places they'll take you to a field where there is nothing, or that nothing's planted, or they've done no preparation and hope that there's nothing there. And they want to see how the dog works the field, covers the field. And then is he just running blindly, or do you see him like run past a bush and like stop for a second and check, no, and then, give it a sniff and move on. And they want to see how they're using the nose while they work the field. And then the third is a search. And we kind of talked about that a minute ago. Do they cover ground? Are they sitting at your feet? And then pointing. They want to see how they point, a natural point. They don't have to hold point in the beginning for a very long time, but they actually have to hit the point and hold it for a bit. And then cooperation. That one's kind of complicated. I'm still learning about that one. I like my dogs to go. I want mine to get way out and disappear. There's a certain threshold there where the dog can get way out, like at 700-800 yards, or where they're so far away they aren't. It's not as easy to identify whether or not they're cooperating with you. If you make a course correction change and they're 700 yards out, they might go below a hill and not be able to see you, and you've made a course correction. Now, when he comes back up and looks and sees, he may work back in that direction, and that's cooperation, but it can get a little difficult. But the way the cooperation, the search, and the use of nose, they all tie together. But
I got a question about cooperation.
Yeah.
I've already got a ton of questions, but I want to ask you about cooperation real quick. So with cooperation, are you finding that people within the breed who are striving for that high mark in cooperation are putting more control on the dog, unreasonable control, unnatural controls in order to fit a standard, or are they doing it, or is it truly beneficial for the hunting style of this dog?
It all depends how you're going to use them, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. That's probably going to pop up here in a lot of different ways. It all depends on what you like. They can do anything, and I look forward to telling you all the things that I commonly do with Haggis a little later. But it really depends on what you like to do, the way you like to hunt. I hunt a lot of red rock chucker out by me, and so we're on really steep inclines, and I want him to stay busy. And I like a dog that ranges. If I'm ever out, let's just say trying to get jackrabbits up for my falcon, I want him out there. And then as soon as he gets it up, he starts screaming and draws my attention and the bird's attention and my sight hounds that help press it further. And that's important. I want them out there finding them. And when you find it, start talking, start barking really loud, and here comes the cavalry. And then on the Red Rock Hills, I'd like them to be out far too, but it's really hard. It's like more aggressive than the surface of Mars. You know, everything's like a basketball-sized boulder that slides out from under you. So like if you have your dog out 500 yards there, I mean, you're really doing something. He's either running blind, you know, or he's really, really working hard, because you can't just run the top of the hill. You got to get up and down and explore the odors that they come in contact with, you know. But then if somebody's hunting grouse in the woods, they might want them closer, and may be super important to them, you know. And it all depends on what you want. And then you do see that in some of these tests. Like I like a rangy dog. I like a dog to get out there. So I may take more points on search, for example. And it's not always this way. I am not a judge, you know. But in my experience with the dogs I've done, they have performed better with their search. They've gotten higher points in search. And then I might lose a point or something with cooperation if I make a course correction and he doesn't adjust immediately, you know. So they do affect their dogs. Now, the first test is supposed to be a natural abilities test, so without a lot of modification to the dog's natural abilities. But in order to get them ready for that test, you have to hunt them. You have to train them. And they do start picking up on the way their handler wants them to perform and adjust fire from there, you know.
The dog is capable of adjusting based on different circumstances, or because obviously even a 60-yard flush in the grouse woods is going to be worthless to most hunters. You know, you don't pick up those birds. You're going to be ineffective as a hunter if you get sometimes even a 30-yard flush in grouse woods, because it's so thick. But so the testing part, and this is going to be a question that I'm not going to hold back on the questions on this. So do we find that people are training to a standard in the Drahthaar breed because they want titles, or are we finding that people are breeding hunting dogs first that they can put titles on? Or certifications, I should say.
Yeah, the first there's a break in there, as far as I can tell for now. Like, in order to be a Drahthaar, they have to pass a number of tests. You know, there's the the spring test, the puppy test, don't let me get mixed up there. There's a first test and then a second test. There's a VJP and a J. Think of J as junior, because there's some acronyms here that can get complicated. So VJP, the J is junior, you know, so that's their first one. And then there's the HCP, which is a little more advanced. You know, that's the following season, in the fall, actually. So the puppy test will be in the spring, and the HCP will be in the fall. And then they have like confirmation and a few other tests that they have to go through to be a Draht, you know, and then at that point they can become breed worthy. I'm trying to get ready for like what I would call the Drahthaar Super Bowl, is the arm brewster. And that's like where you don't have 9-year-old dogs or 8-year-old perfection dogs training against, you know, first-year dogs or something. It's where they do the HZP across the nation, and everybody's competing with a similar age dog that has about the same amount of experience. And in order to do that, I had to do, you know, x-rays, and they're like an OFA, just a little more complicated. And they count their teeth and look at the pigment of their eyes and their skin, and they do a lot, you know. And it's not just that one's pretty, you know, or, you know, kind of like how some of the show breeders but it's a functioning confirmation, you know. We don't want them to have bad teeth. We don't want them to have inferior pigment here or there, or the coarseness of the hair, you know, which makes great for, like, my dog can get super muddy, and I bring him home. I just throw him in the box. The mud dries. I get him out of the box when I get home. I kind of just aggressively beat him with my hand, you know, and knock all that mud off. Yeah. And he comes in the house, and he's fine because that wiry coarse, it's like a wire brush. All the dirt just kind of falls off of him.
I've noticed the same thing about,
like, what's that?
I said, I've noticed the same thing about this young. He's got a broken coat. He's got a rough coat on him. And it's like he never gets dirty. It's the craziest thing. You know, it doesn't get down into the skin.
Yeah. You get into the cockaburs too, just like every other breed, you know, so I'm not saying it's bulletproof, but the dirt comes off.
Yeah. But even even the burrs, I get a burr on in a Labrador or a golden retriever with all that downy hair. It just seems to mat around it. And with these terriers, man, a quick comb, you can pick a lot of them out just effortlessly with your hand, or a quick comb and boom, it's gone.
Yeah,
So
and
is it
whatever it
hair
tied
similar to that?
Yep, that's right. And it's really coarse, is what I like, And if you do get a burr in there, if you just get a wire pick and rip it out, you're not going to get a burr there again. That down, whatever down they did have there is gone, So I just tear them out, and the dog doesn't care. That's the cool thing. You can strip them. They're a breed that made to be stripped. So sometimes Haggis, his hair will get out of hand, and I'm like, all right, now's the time to do it. And I go out to the deck and I just start ripping it out, and he loves it. He'll stand there, he'll push back into it. And I'm just with fistfuls, just grabbing hair and tearing it out, and somebody to watch it the first time is like, oh my God, what are you doing to the dog? Like, he likes it. They are not bothered by it, and you can
they're bred to work.
Yeah.
They're bred to do dirty work. So my experience is, the reason I asked you that question about, are we breeding for function or are we breeding to pass tests, is because I see a lot of dog groupies that want to be able to say, oh, I've got this breed of dog and it's passed these certifications. Like, I'll give you an example with police canine tracking, Napwata. I trained with a lot of civilians that had Napwata dogs that they were trying to achieve their Napwata, and they were civilian tracking dogs. And it was like they were more out there for the Facebook likes and everything rather than having an actual working dog. And a lot of these dogs couldn't run a track, but they could pass a test. They could pass the test with 4 turns and a lose and all that. But working dog type stuff, I was not impressed. And is that similar? Because Americans are extremely into fads.
Yeah. Oh, well, I probably started talking. I love to talk about dogs. I'll put that disclaimer out there, so I can get a little carried away and get off on a tangent, and I'm not looking back. I get super excited, and I'm going to start talking. So that might happen. You might have to pull me back. I realize now that I didn't complete the answer to that question. But they have both parts within the Drahthaar testing system, and that's what I was trying to get to in the beginning. They have the puppy test, the VJP, the HCP, the confirmation, and some other tests. And okay, now you're a Drahthaar. Now you can breed. And then they have a VGP. Yeah. So that's not J for junior. Now it's G for good. At that point, he should be a good dog. He's passed all the tests to become a Drahthaar. And then at that point, man, they go into everything. They're graded in like one scenario where it's like a large set number of acres, and they have like however many judges out there, and in a prescribed amount of time, that dog has to be seen by all the judges, has to cover that much ground. So you get like a lighter dog that can run, and is really fast and active. And then they and I'm not saying they do this to offset it, but that's what I think is unique about it, is because then they'll do something called like the fox in a box, where it's the test where they'll make this like earth-looking box, essentially. I mean, you can basically take a 3-foot cube and cut the top off and throw it out there, and that would more or less be what it's like. But the dog has to be sent from a distance, has to run all the way down there, jump up and over into this like 3-foot cube. In there, he'll find like a 7 to 10 pound fox. Now, if the fox doesn't weigh that much, they add lead shot or whatever, but there's a standardized weight that they have to perform. And then they pick this 7 to 10 pound fox up, and they jump back out of the box and retrieve it all to the handler. And you can imagine a dog with a 10-pound weight in their mouth jumping 3 feet down. They're going to slam down on the ground. It's going to jar their mouth. And if the dog sets it down and just takes a quick regrip, he's disqualified. He failed. He has to be able to jump out comfortably. And I think that's the main thing. He has to be able to run down there, jump in there, pick up this 7 to 10 pound weight, and jump out comfortably enough to not have to readjust after jumping down with this heavy weight in his mouth, and then run back. So now you can't just have these tiny little scrawny dogs. They have to be strong enough to deal with delivering this, this heavy package comfortably. He can't set it down, pick it up, run 100 yards, set it down, pick it up. No, he has to trot it all the way back. And haggis can retrieve 30 to 40-pound coyotes. It's hilarious.
No
like
kidding.
if we wound one, he'll bring them back. He'll run out there, finish it off, pick it up, and bring it all the way back to the truck. And he's retrieving a dog that's similar to sizes of some of our other bird dogs. But anyway, my point is the early tests, to answer your question, the early tests are your natural ability tests, and these tests are designed to prove which lines of dogs have the correct amount of hunt in this aspect, and can they point? Yes, they have a functioning hunt, a point where they're too young to be able to have that developed to an extreme level. And then the HCP is all about taking it. It's still a natural abilities test, but in my opinion, it's more centered around retrieving wounded game. So it'll be a point and then a shot and then a retrieve back to the handler, and then like a 900-foot track with let's say a rabbit, where they have like these 45-degree turns and then pick it up and then retrieve it back to the handler. If the dog sets it down halfway, he fails. If he takes it to the judge that's out there at the target, he fails. There's all these things, and those kind of prove natural ability. You really can't train for them too much. Any training I'm going to do to make my dog good at tracking a jackrabbit is real world training. It's not, they don't go out there and let a jackrabbit go and then put your dog on it. You walk around until you get a wild flush, and then your dog is graded on that. So in that aspect, it's kind of hard to just get a title. The dog has to point. The dog has to search the field really well. The dog has to legitimately track, a furred game. And it's hard to cheat through that. And then when you have some of the retrieving in the HCP, I put a force fetch on my dogs before they compete in the HCP. And at that point, you're seeing a little bit more of the training, but at that point, they want the pointing to be longer, the tracks to be more committed, just a little more focused of a dog, and then the confirmation. Then after that, then you get into the VGP, and that's where you can kind of see, maybe some people hunting for some more titles there. So you do get both sides of it, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. I was just curious because, I'm not going to lie, when I've heard of Drahts for a number of years, my whole adult life, probably, but surrounding that, there seems to be a lot of different camps around, or opinions. Well, there's basically two camps. You've got this camp of people that say they're glorified German wire hair pointers, and then you get other people. It's like, no, they're Drahts. They're not German wire hair pointers. So I'm glad you answered it like that and covered that. But okay, so you've already told us that you can train a lizard to retrieve. And so this is what I want to get into. Knowing all of that about the Drahts and knowing that you're a professional trainer, you choose to incorporate the Draht into hunting big game with your hounds that you have as well.
Yep. Is that why, or
why there? What is it about the Draht that makes you were like, I'm gonna throw this thing out with some hound dog breeds and see if it'll tree lions and catch bears?
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess in order to answer that question, I have to start where it came from. I was in the southeast hunting and catching pigs, and that was my party. And I did a bunch of other stuff as well. I always have entirely too many irons in the fire, which is why I have no hair on my head.
You're in good company.
Yeah, there you go. Awesome. Go team bald guy. I was having a blast with it. I was digging in the dirt with the yags, and I was catching pigs with them, and I was fleshing rabbits for my falcons and hawks and stuff, and I was just having a great time. And then I wanted to move out west to improve just some of my falconry, the styles of falconry and hunting that I wanted to do. I think there's amazing hunting back on the East Coast. It's just, what do you like? And what I wanted to do was out here. So I came out here, and specifically where I live, there isn't as much earth game, so I had this other versatile breed, the Yag Terriers, and they can do a lot of things. They're very versatile dogs. I absolutely love them, but I didn't have as much earth work as I had back on the East Coast, and I had no pigs. And I had developed, I took the lines of some of the people that came before me and added my little flavor to it. And I had some Yag terriers that were a little bit bigger than the standard that were great at catching pigs. I mean, they'd move a track really fast, and then they were going to try and catch it if they got there, and I had a lot of luck with them. But then when I got out here, I don't have anything to dig anymore, and they're trying to catch bear and lion and doing it. I mean, I'm not saying like they're tough enough to catch a lion. I'm not. Any dog that grabs a hold of a lion and wants to stay there is going to wish he hadn't, like an adult Tom or something. They're not gonna come away from that, right? And Missy, one of my foundation dogs there, did that on a number of occasions, and she got her. I'm just happy she was with us. She's still with us after the first time it happened, and then just as soon as I got her healed up, a young Tom treed low, and she jumped up there and grabbed a hold of him too, and just right back to the vets, and so I was having all these trouble with the breeds I was looking for, and working with these lines that I climbed to the top, and I bred exactly what I wanted, and now it's not working because I'm in a new area. So then I had a buddy that had haggis, had a Drahthaar that was young, and it was just a little bit too much dog for him. I mean, he's an amazing trainer, but it was more than he needed. The dog was running huge, big, and he wanted something a little closer, not quite as rangy. So he's like, hey, you want it? I paid a lot of money for it, but you could have it for $600. I was like, I've been wanting to try one of these things, kind of like what you were talking about. Like, I've heard a lot about them. I hear I've heard people refer to them as like a 70-pound Yag Terrier. And I'm like, shut up. It is not. You don't get to just take that, And so I got him for $600, and we kind of butted heads a little bit in the beginning, and then we started doing everything. And I was having trouble finding stuff he couldn't do. One of my problems with my Yag Terriers is, how hounds can be at a bear tree or a lion tree. They're just going crazy. You got some tearing roots up. You got others jumping. You got some that have learned they don't like to be bumped, and they get back a little bit. You get all that. And then when you have a 15-pound Yag Terrier run 10 feet up and then fall backwards like they do, and then fall on their black, and it's a little black thing, they're wondering, like, what? Yeah. Even if you're there, things can go bad in a half second. With a bunch of 70-pound tree hounds that are seeing red at the bottom of a tree, and they think something just fell out of it, and
one of the things that I found this week, this is the first Yag I've ever had, and wasn't sure how I was going to incorporate this. So we were coon hunting one night, and the Yag was with me. And when I got there, he didn't understand the game was up in the top of the tree. He thought the game was to wrestle and, chew on dogs at the bottom of the tree. Right. Because you got tree dogs that are treed, and all of a sudden that trips the trigger, and he was like, whoa, what's going on here? And so he's making his rounds at the tree. He wasn't being aggressive. He was just like grabbing and grabbing and grabbing.
What do I do with all this energy? I need to, exactly. What do I do with it?
So now now I figured out, okay, we're going to lead him into the tree, tie him back, let him see what's going on, and introduce him that way. It's a huge mistake I made, and I'm lucky that it didn't turn into a dog fight at the base of the tree, really. Mm-hmm. And he's only 7 months old. So getting back to the Draht, or you got this Draht, and did you have hounds also? Or was it a deal?
Yeah, I've been running bear and lion, with my hounds for a while beforehand, and I was bringing my Yag Terriers. I was treating plenty of bear and lion with my Yags, and it was my only issues when I got into it with strange dogs. I'd have me and a few of my other hunting buddies. I'm sure you probably hunt the same with them. You got a few people you hunting. All right, Billy Bob the dog and old Fred over there, they had a little bit of issues with the Yag in the beginning, but now they know he's part of the team. They're buddies. They'll honor his bark. And, then you as long as you're not hunting with a whole pack of new guys with their dogs, I've never seen a little one. I was having a blast with it. Don't get me wrong. They're great dogs. I treat plenty of bear and lion with Yag Terriers, and some with only Yag Terriers, But I had already had tree hounds, when I got the first Draht, and then I started taking them. And he took right to it. He kind of trees like a jackhammer. It's not pretty. It kind of sounds like I'm banging a pot and a pan together, but just pop, 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 pop. You could just set a metronome to it. He's going to keep barking like that till he falls over. And I took him to the first tree, kind of like what you're saying. I just let him in on leash and then tied him back and let him kind of see it. And he fell right into it. And I just did that like 2 times. And then I started turning him loose with the hounds. And And then all of a sudden I was like, hold on, he's putting his nose down on that was my starting dog. I just used my starting dog to start that track. And then I turned loose of the group, after my two track starters got it going. And then, okay, I'm going to turn the rest of the pack, the two puppies, the older dog, this other dog that's really good at shutting them down. Once it gets going, I turn them all loose and I run him to it. And they all run in. And, some of the better nosed dogs are hitting right where the track starters started that old track on dirt, on sand. And then he ran over and started barking at it. I was like, whoa, am I really seeing what I just started seeing? I was still, I thought he was just going to be a novelty item out there. But no, he was putting his nose down. He was, nose down barking on tracks, and treeing like a jackhammer and always being there at the tree. And then I still don't use him so much as my track starter, just because I got American dryland hounds, that's the thing. But I have started him. I have been out doing something else, saw a fresh track and thrown him down on, and he's treated. It's happening. He's done that in front of numerous people. These aren't just hearsay stories. I have people that have come out and seen it.
Well, you came highly recommended as a guest, so
yeah,
I'll verify.
I think a lot of people, would like to pretend that, oh yeah, mine just does it. They've never done it. No, it's work just like hounds. You gotta teach them, but they can do it. And so I just started taking him just because he was my buddy. I was doing all kinds of stuff with him, and that's why, and we'll get to that later. That's why I love the Drahts. It's almost like a hunting buddy. I'll get up in the morning and I'll look at Haggis or one of my other dogs. I'm like, what are we gonna do today, bud? You want to go? You want to go run the tree hounds in the morning, and then we can go out with some of the pointers and point a chucker, and then we'll go over with Bob and his Labrador, and we'll see if you can beat him to retrieving the more ducks than he does, and then after that, let's go try and kill a badger or whatever, he's like my hunting buddy, that's what's so cool about him, But that's what I thought it was. But then he started taking to it, just like we do with the hounds. There's things we do to develop the traits, and then as they progress, they kind of learn on the job. Watching the other hounds, they learn most of what they do a mile away from us, or finish it, they don't learn the basics, but they really become good dogs out there on their own. And he was doing the same thing.
So what are some of the biggest differences you've seen, comparing a Draht and a hound side by side? What are some of the personality differences and just some of the basic, the biggest differences you've seen? Houndsmen XP is very proud of our partnership with the organization Freedom Hunters. Freedom Hunters is a nonprofit organization that takes America's veterans hunting from field to field, from the battlefield to a field near you when you volunteer your time to take America's warriors hunting with you and your hounds. It's easy. Go to houndsmenxp.com, click on the partnership tab, and it will take you to Freedom Hunters. You can go direct to their website to make donations at freedomhunters.org. Support America's heroes. Let's pay it back. Visit Freedom Hunters at freedomhunters.org or go to houndsmenxp.com and you can find them on our website. From field to field. It is hot outside. H-O-T hot. I'm tired of it. I know you're tired of it. We're all waiting on winter to get here. It can't get here fast enough, but we are still out here running these hounds. And dehydration and heat exhaustion, heat casualty is the number one risk for your hound. Check out Dogs Are Hydrated at dogsartree.com and pick up a hydration kit for your hounds today. This is scientific backed. You can check it all out on the Dogs Are Tree website, dogsartree.com. Enter that promo code HXP, 20% off at checkout, and you're going to get 20% off your order. If you join us over on Patreon, you can find that information at houndsmenxp.com on how to support this show. You'll get a deeper discount. Guys, Dogs Are Hydrated will protect your hounds in this hot weather. Check them out. Throw in a hat while you're there, too. Now, let's get back to the show.
Okay. I kind of knew that one was going to come. And there's a lot of ways to go with that. A lot of times our really good hounds are independent, self-sufficient. Take them, put them relatively over a track. It's autopilot. They're going to do it, And that's great. That's amazing, you know. And with the Drahts, they can work independently, you know, like some of these tracks, like one of the tracks in the VJP is a 40-hour blood trail where they'll use 8 ounces of blood and do like I think it's like a 900 meter track, you know, with as many turns and twists and 180s and all that stuff. And they just have 8 ounces to go over this 900 meters, and they trickle it out on a 40-hour, and they have to, they do that, you know. You can get dogs with that certification. So they have the nose, it's there, you know. But they can also do the other stuff. Like if you drop something, some of them are going to pick it up and try and put it right back in your hand. They need to give you stuff. And because of that, they work with you really well. So they can kind of do both. I'm not going to go force fetching my hounds. I'm not, you know, they aren't going to do competitive obedience and search and find blind retrieves for ducks that I didn't, you know, like, so there's differences, you know, and that makes the hounds specialists and better, single-minded. They're going to do it, you know, whereas with them, they work with you, they hunt for you, and they can hunt for themselves too. There's some hound dogs that I've seen catch, you know, 250-pound pigs, just like a bulldog, you know, like I've seen some hounds that are every bit as hard as a pit bull, you know, like there's really tough ones out there. And then I've seen some that back up, that bay a bear from like 100 feet back, you know, and I've seen some that bay them from so, I mean, you get a variety, you know, so, but on the whole, I would say that Drahts are harder. They're grittier, you know, like as in the aspect of, I'm going to grab this and I'm going to kill it, you know.
Whereas I was going to ask, that was my next question.
The hounds are like, I'm never going to quit. You know, a hound will, you know, they may lose 2 feet and they're still going to be barking at it. They're never going to quit, but they aren't in their head like, I'm going to grab this thing and shake the fur off of it. You know, I'm going to bay the life out of this animal. You know, I guess is like, you know, it's so goals are a little bit different, you know. But I would say on a whole, the Drahts are a little bit harder. They want, you know, they're wanting to put their mouth on it, you know, not just bark at it, you know. And that is good and bad, you know. Exactly. So I'm not trying to say they're better because of this. No, they're different because of this, you know. And if that's the way you like to hunt, or that's what you need in your pack, you know, it can kind of help out. So that's about the hardness there, or grit, depending on your vocabulary. I will say that the Drahts can do the older, like I said, they got the 40-hour blood trail, you know, that's a graded timed event, you know, so they have the nose. But a lot of times they're trying to run it as fast as they can and get up there and catch it, you know, and I would say our American dryland hounds, you know, or any kind of hounds, you know, are they're really good at sitting there and grinding out on that track, just stock. You know, they lose it. All right, I'm going to loop back around. All right, I found it again. All right, it took another 2 feet. I lost it, you know, and now I'm backing around. And the Drahts can do that, but the nod definitely goes to the hound. Whereas the Draht can try it out, you know, because they like to work with their handler a little bit. If they're like, if you're doing a 40-hour blood trail, sometimes they're there. They're on like a 30 or 40 foot lead, but you're still there.
Right.
Whereas with a lion track, they're, you know, or a bear track, they're 5 miles away. And then they go through this, let's say a drainage where it's all boulders, you know, for like a quarter mile, it's just boulders. And he just is having hell getting through that drainage and keeps losing it. I would say the Draht is more inclined to say, I've lost it. I'm going to go find dad, you know, see if I can get some direction, you know, whereas the hound's like, I don't care where dad is, you know, as long as I eat next week sometime, I'm going to stay on this track, you know? So you get that. I still use my hounds as my sure enough track starters. If I get an old track, like a, you know, older than a 24-hour lion track in some sand is pretty difficult, you know, and I'm going to put my hounds on that and let them get it sorted out, get that signature, you know, that they're looking for, not just a lion, this lion. I'm tracking this lion. I know what he smells. I know what he ate kind of thing. And then I'll turn him loose to it. And he can still do it, but I see that I think they get a little clumsier when they're remote from the handler. You know, if they're like a mile or two from the handler and they're just running into some really hardships, they're more inclined to come back than the hounds are. But at the same time, once it starts to heat up, I don't know about you, but I have my track starters and I have my track finishers, and I have some that can do all of it, you know, and all of them are expected to do it, but they really shine at working that, you know, that left foot, right foot, 36-hour old lion track on rock and sand. And then And then I have my other guys that once this thing gets up, he may put 900 yards between him and everything else out there, just burning it down.
Yeah.
And the Drahts I find they can pick their nose up because they also wind for the pointing, and they can pick their nose up and really start pushing the track a little bit. And I'm not saying he leaves all my hounds behind him, because that's not the case. I have one hound named Bobby, and he's a bolt of lightning once that bear gets up, or the lion gets up, and he'll bonsai jump off the cliff faces and scale down him like a monkey. But I would put him as an outlier. He is a top performer, when the tracks get going, and Haggis is right there with him, so the Drahts can push the track a little bit faster because they aren't as track dedicated, but Haggis wouldn't have gotten there if it wasn't for the colder nosed dogs. So I could say that they could work a hot track a little bit faster because out the box, they're a little bit a hotter nose type dog, so, so is one better? Is one, they're different there. I will say that, both of them take the tracking early on. This last Draht I got, the Haggis came from one breeder, Four Sisters Kennel over on the East Coast, and amazing dog. I absolutely love him. And then some of the other dogs I got all came from John Davis at Red Rock Drahthaars. I got into it once I got this. Well, I guess that answers the first question. Once I got Haggis, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Let me find somebody to tell me more about these things. And I got a hold of a guy named John Simon on the East Coast, and he filled me in and told me what I was looking at and messing with and what to expect. And then he got me in touch with the breeder over here on the West Coast, or on the western side of the states, and with Red Rock, John Davis there, and he's kind of mentored me in the Drahts and getting through the testing systems and stuff. And he's got some fine dogs, but I've gotten two from him. One of them was doing great and tragically got hit by a car. And then I got another one. I replaced it from another dog from him. And he's doing fantastic as well. But they and this last one has got an incredible nose. I would put up until 6 months, I'd put his nose on par, and he worked it like a hound. And then after that, the hounds really start, like, the track recognition. The boom hits it, starts screaming, and moves it. Whereas,
so what you're telling me is you brought a dog from the east to the dry ground of the Southwest, and the dog is working out well.
That's Haggis. He's fantastic. He rigs from the side by side with the other hounds. If I were to,
I'm setting you up here a little bit, Chad.
That's fine. That's fine.
And
I can, but there's a. I'm at 2. You're shooting at 1, and I know where you're going, but there's a 0.5 in there as well. So like, I'll say mine, and you say yours, and I'll say mine again. But the dog is doing great. But he'll, like, if we have the track's going, and then I showed up, over here, and we were working it before, and now I have Haggis. If I dump Haggis, he's not just running to the barking dogs. He'll run in that direction, but when he runs over the track, he'll stop, put his nose down, he'll start voicing.
Boom.
And then he'll follow behind him.
Yeah.
But what you're getting at is a dog that came from the east, can perform out west, and yes, he can. He did never work big game over there. All he was doing was retrieving ducks and flushing stuff. But again, I believe that comes from the standardized testing. They aren't hounds. They aren't single purpose hounds. Like, if you put a Draht, and there's a lot of people that only hunt ducks with their Drahts. Now, they had to pass the test to get all these other stuff. They had to prove that they can track. They had to prove that they can do this and that. And whereas Haggis had to, all of his parents had to prove that they could track to a standard.
I get that. But this is I've had this theory, and I've been trying to prove this theory.
Okay.
And I want to ask you. Yeah, they passed the test, but what is it that makes them be able to come from a different region, come to your region, and then transfer their abilities over? Is it environment? Is it breeding? Is it drive? What is the key to Haggis catching stuff? What is it? Is it because it's not because they passed the test?
No,
it's because what?
The desire, the drive, 100%, the want to. You know, you could take a pit bull and he can beat some greyhounds in a chase after a rabbit because he wants it more. Now, the greyhounds are more physically capable of doing it, but if they don't want to, it doesn't matter. If you got a bottle, you know, like a rocket ship tied to your belly, if you don't want it, you're not going to get there. Whereas this little stubby leg bulldog, man, he wants to put his mouth on that rabbit, and he can beat the dogs that don't want it as bad, you know, even though he's genetically inferior for that type of work.
Right.
So I would say the drive, the mental type, so to speak, is where that comes from. And he doesn't have that because he passed the test. He has that because the only dogs that got bred passed the test. The only dogs that ever got bred had that drive. So the test didn't make the drive. The test just proved that the dog had the drive, at least to this minimum standard. So again, think of the field of wheat again. You don't have any tall ones. You don't have any short ones. They all have this minimum standard, you know?
Right.
And it just kind of like that's with cattle breeding, for example. People need to focus on getting rid of all the bad ones rather than keeping everything and buying the really good cows, so to speak. You know, with the Drahts, you may lose this perfect pointing dog because he can't retrieve that well. Okay, we're going to take that hit. But everything else, and after, you know, however many 12, 15, you know, however many generations of all the dogs having this minimum standard, you know, that baseline for all these aspects just slowly climbs. So yes, I am not saying you could take a dog past the test with him and now he's a great dog. No. But if you have 50 generations of dogs that all pass that test, it's going to start to show itself. Now the test doesn't put the drive in there. The test just crops out the dogs that didn't have the drive, and none of them sneak through and muddy the bloodline, you know? And
well, here's my theory. Here's a theory that I've been trying to prove, and I'll set this up a little bit. As houndsmen, as people, I think it's just human nature. We get tribalistic about we get very anchored in what we believe, and then we become tribalistic, and then we only verify our beliefs in our own little echo chambers. So whether it's a competition coon hunter in the east, a dry ground lion hunter in the west, a side hound, whatever it is, we get these, we get anchored in what our beliefs are, and then we fail to move out of that. That's called a paradigm paralysis, when you're unable to move out of your own beliefs, even when you're shown that it works in another way. So my theory has always been that drive is the key to catching game. And it doesn't matter whether they're doing it in the East, they're doing it in Canada, they're doing it in South Africa or the Southwest. And I think what I have noticed, we even do that with the ability to scent. And we classify, we simplify, and we say, well, that's a cold-nosed dog, or that's a hot-nosed dog. And there's more to it than that. And I think we just use the term cold nose and hot nose because it's an easy way to describe what kind of dog we've got. But dogs' olfactory senses aren't that much different. If we took and did a scientific study between a boxer and a bloodhound, the olfactory senses differences are going to be so small that we would never be able to see it with our eye. You know what I mean? So we have to evaluate. Like my boxer has got more drive to catch coons than some hounds I've had. And that's why she goes, and that's why she does. My pit bull will track coons and squirrels and different things. They're not going to be my top catchers, but they've got the drive to do it. And I think if you took a hound or a Draht or a Yag or whatever breed of dog you want, and you take it and you raise it you expose it to the environment, and they've got the drive to catch, they will figure out how to use that nose to do what they need to do.
I agree. And I think I agree with that. You know, the drive that's the tallest pole in the tent, so to speak. You know, like you got you got a big tent and there's all these poles.
I like that.
Up. The 1-2, that's the big one right in the center. You know, like everything else comes behind that, you know, but like, just like you were saying a little while ago, in my opinion, traits, you know, it's almost like this line of dogs just likes, you know, like with my coyote and deer. You know,
Uh-huh.
I was taking deer dogs that had only run deer dogs, and now I'm trying to run them on coyote, and they did it. Again, they did it. They didn't fail at it, you know, but like you saw it. It was clear as day. You could take a person that really doesn't even know hunting dogs and be like, man, they really like that smell. That's different. They kind of like that one, but they really like that. They're acting crazy, you know? So I could think that lines of dogs that have been bred and worked in certain regions have secondary traits that might assist them at hunting in this region or that region. You know?
I agree.
So is it as simple as a cold nose and hot nose? No. I like one of my best track starters. Let's just say, hey, Chad, I got this hunt going on out here. I want you to come out here, bring your dogs out. You know, we got people that are going to pay for everything, going to fly you out here on a private jet. We'll load all your dogs into the thing. I would probably take my best track starter, and I doubt I'd bring him. You know, like, because he's going to have that. He's going to be slow. He's going to be slow and methodical. And, like, he's probably going to get dusted out on the East Coast because he has that. Don't get ahead of yourself. Don't do this. Don't do that. You know, so I don't know. I think there are some traits that can lend to different aspects of it. But for the most part, like you said, 100% drive is it.
Let me share a story on that, because I have traveled around a lot with this pack of hounds that I have here.
Mm-hmm.
I think when we can overload, we can do a sensory overload on these hounds. If you brought, and I've seen it in competition, coon dogs being brought from different regions. You know, for instance, you take a coon hound from Oklahoma. You know, semi-arid. It's a lot drier than it is in Indiana. That may be a top cooner in Oklahoma, but you bring him to northern Indiana, southern Michigan, where there's a coon up every other bush. The scenting conditions are outstanding. There's moisture in the ground. Maybe there's a cornfield, and all that scent is being held down close to the ground. I've seen them completely melt down in that situation. I've also seen that hound, after he's been here for a week or 2 weeks, adjust to that and now he's understanding what he is smelling and how to work it. And I think that goes back to that drive. I'll give you another example. We brought bear dogs from the east and went to hunted the White Mountains in Arizona. We're driving down the road and got the dogs on the box, and we get just a bump, just whoop. Like, man, that, you know, from my experience, that's not something I'd turn loose on in back here. You know, I'm not going to waste my day on that sort of an indication. Well, we go on down the road, another group of dogs that comes up behind us that were from the area. They come up through there and their box blows up. I mean, it's just, just box shaker. Our dogs didn't realize, they weren't familiar with that. Those dogs that came through in the second truck had already adjusted to the situation, the environment, the humidity levels. They knew that was enough for them to be able to catch that bear. Based on my dog's experience from the environment they came from, they're like, yeah, I kind of smell one, but I'm not sure. So they're lacking confidence.
Yeah.
That's the differences I've seen. But by the end of the week, we were getting box shakers.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree
with our dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's just nurture nature type thing, you know, and a slightly different direction. But yeah, I totally agree with that.
Yep.
And
well, Chad, you got.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, man, you got so much going on there. We definitely need to get together again. But I do want to ask you a couple more questions about these Drahts.
Yeah.
So, are you finding that with the drive and different stuff on your big and dangerous game, you know, your bears and your lions, is that presenting a special problem for you? Or these dogs, what kind of problems does that present for you?
You can, and this is, I knew this one was probably going to come around too. You get people on all sides. I get some Draht people that are like, hey, you run your dogs on bear and lion. That's stupid. I've been told that by predominant breeders. Mm-hmm. And I've had other breeders that are like, man, that's fantastic. This is what they're for. Get after it, man. You know, so I mean, you just like everything else, there's all kinds, you know. And then on the other side, you know, you get some hound people that are like, that dog doesn't belong, you know. And I'm like, it's just one more dog, you know, like don't do that.
Yeah.
Or other people that are like, oh, that's what I need. I need grit. I'm like, man, you can get grit with your hounds too, you know, like, so you can actually get all types, but, oh gosh, I got off in the weeds. What was the question again?
What kind of special problems have you found that's presented with that amount of drive and wanting to put their mouth on stuff?
Okay, yeah, that is a thing. You know, they do want to put their mouth on. They want to pick it up and bring it back, and if it's alive, they want to shake it first. And they do have more of.
That's a rough.
What's that?
That's a rough way. That's a rough way to live if you're looking at a 250, 300-pound black bear.
Oh yeah, big time. You know, and there's some that won't, you know, grab a hold under any circumstances. And there's some bear that are just whooshing. You just get one step closer.
Right.
You're going to meet your maker today, you know? So what I find, you know, cause I've heard, and I guess I don't need to get into disclaimers anymore, cause there's a bunch of parties on this, but what I've found is, I believe that people that are afraid of running their draughts on it or think that there's going to be a problem, they aren't houndsmen. They aren't familiar with treeing bear and lion and everything. And like our hounds, by the time they're treeing their first bear or lion, they've learned that they can't whoop everything in the woods already. You know, right. And there's various ways to go about that, you know, we don't really need to get into, you know, but like they know that, you know, they're going to win, but they can't just grab a hold and shake everything. They can't do that. You got to back up and bark at it, you know, and their genetics tell them, you even have some tough dogs that will put their mouth on game and they still don't even bite it. They bark at it with their mouth on it, you know? That kind of lends the hounds as well, you know, whereas the Draht's like, I want to grab this, shake it, or bring it back to dad or something like that. And I think the biggest trouble is people are like, okay, I'm going to go out with my buddy Fred, who's got a bunch of hounds. I'm going to throw my Draht down with him. And up until that point, his dog is like 4 years old and he's only ever put his mouth on animals that he is stronger than, you know, that he can outmatch immediately. He is unaware that there's an animal on the planet that could whoop him, you know, and the learning curve can be steep. If the very first time that dog learns that is on that rough bear, you know, that we all know is out there, you know. Now, if he runs onto that sissy female or that sissy male bear that just, you know, isn't going to bite no matter what happens, he's just going to run there. Okay, great. You know, heck, he might be even in more trouble next time, though, you know. So I find that the only time you could really get into trouble is if you work a lot of small furred game with your Draht over and over and over and over and over. And he thinks he's an Abrams tank, and then you take him out and throw him on a walking bay, you're going to have trouble. You are. But that's the case with anything. If you took like a rough whatever breed of hound and only ever worked it on game that he could bark at a few times and then dispatch and then do the exact same thing, wait till he's 4.5 years old and then throw him out on a walking bay, you are going to have the same problem, you know? And it's just, I think one breed lends itself to this type of training and this other breed, you know, Draht, the hound, you know, they lend themselves to working this way. And I think the hounds more often learn that they can't kill everything in the woods, you know, but they can do both. Haggis, I mean, a badger is not a weak animal. A badger is not a weak animal. They bite hard. Or a coon down in like a 35-pound coon down in a tight little hole. That is a rough animal, you know?
Yeah.
And haggis can go down a hole that's not deep, you know, like sometimes badger will run to him and then go down in him and turn around and fight from the hole. And he'll grab a hold of that badger, pull it out, shake the stuffings out of it and bring it back to me. And he knows how to do that safely, but efficiently. But then he bays 10 feet back, 15 feet back on a bear. They know the difference. You know, and that's one of the bonuses. Yes, they are, in my opinion, on average, harder. They want to grab it, hold it, put their mouth on it and grip it. But because I would say a Drahthaar is a little more of a dog trainer's dog. You know, they come moldable. That lends itself to a communication, like a codependent relationship with that dog. And that they aren't smarter, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. They aren't smarter, but they understand better. You can explain it. They pick up on things better, where hounds learn their best and coolest lessons. When you're ever like, hey, that's a brilliant hound, it's because of stuff they learned on their own. Whereas with the Draht, you can kind of say, hey, don't do this. No, don't do this. And then he's like, okay, I got you. So they can be harder,
what
but
you're
they can
saying,
also be smarter.
So to make sure I understand what you're saying, you feel like hounds learn from exposure and they figure stuff out on their own, whereas a lot of times Drahts are more moldable in the training situation to be able to accept that.
That's right.
Is that kind of okay?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get at. So I mean, the fact that Haggis can learn that he can kill a badger and bring it back to me, but bay a bear is a big deal, whereas like a hound can learn that it could shake the stuffings out of a small raccoon and bring it back to you, but he needs to bay a bear too. But a badger bites hard. And I'm not saying hounds can't kill a badger or bring it back to you or something like that, but like that would be,
most won't though.
I would agree, on average, that's the way where Haggis is like, hey, this is a hard biting animal. This is a full grown male coyote. This is a full grown 40-pound badger, that bites like a set of vice grips, and I can kill these, that bear over there. I can't, I need to bark at that. And they can learn that. So I would say, if you don't start them out the right way, you can get in all kinds of drama. If you start them the right way, they can be just as good as a hound, but just don't let them be a 3-year-old dog the first time they learn what a bear is. I've seen that
with these plots. You take them to the marsh or take them hog hunting, they have zero respect for a hog. It's the hog, even though it's got big cutters on it and stuff like that, they don't recognize that part of it as a threat, because mostly the pig presents itself as prey. Mm-hmm. It's running. It's still, there's something, they know that pig is scared of them. Whereas they run a bear into a laurel thicket and it's backed in there. They read that body language and they know that this isn't someplace, I do not need to be in there challenging this end of the bear. I'm at a disadvantage here. I've seen some great hounds that have learned where that distance is. And I think as houndsmen, we like to see it close and tight. Mm-hmm. We like to be able to talk about close baying hounds, but I'm to the point where if my dog can hold it at 15 feet, he's still holding it. He doesn't need to be 5 feet. And if he needs to be 5 feet or 2 feet, he can be. But if he can do it at 15, I'm happy. Yeah. I don't, I'm not packing dogs out. I'm not stapling dogs up and stuff like that. But
it's the same with pigs. Yeah. I mean, you can, there's a fine line between keeping them at bay and pushing them to run,
and it's individual pig, it's, you get some pigs that even though they may be 250, 275 and have big cutters on them, they just don't turn around and they still want to get away, where you get some of those hogs that'll be like, I don't have to run from you. And you'll get in there and you've got dogs that are reaching in and grabbing, but then they're getting back,
Yep.
It's crazy. Yeah, that's what amazes me about these dogs is their ability to recognize that, and they can read body language and they have that sense to know. Yeah. So back to that would be the difference. Yes, the Drahts wanting to grab a hold, but they just need to learn that they aren't an Abrams tank. There are bigger animals out there than them. And use your voice, back up, bark at it. Right.
Like you're still doing it. Mm-hmm. And as long as it doesn't have 4 years of just running in, not even barking and grabbing the furred animal and dispatching, and then you take it out there and throw it in with a bunch of veteran hounds on a walking bay, you'll be just fine. So that's the difference there.
Well, good deal.
So
Chad.
The hardness versus a hound, the nose comparison, and the tracking. That's what I assumed that most houndsmen would want to know about him. What my favorite part of him, like I said before, is he's my buddy. That's what I got. That's what he lends. He's joking aside, without fear of sounding corny, he's my best friend. He really is. Me and that dog do everything. We'll go find raccoons and catch and kill them. We'll kill badgers. We'll pull them out of the ground. We'll point chucker. We'll point pheasants. We'll retrieve ducks. My buddy will shoot ducks, but hey, we lost 3 of them out there. Could you bring Haggis out here and help him find them? We'll go out there and find them. He'll blind retrieve. He's not even there. I'll just walk up and say, bring. He goes out there. He'll find the ducks and bring them back. I can hunt them with my falcon. so he knows don't kill this bird, but we kill chukars, but we don't touch the falcon. We chase the rabbit.
Amazing.
We chase the rabbit so that the falcon can hit the rabbit. So if you can get the rabbit, kill it. But if the bird gets there first, don't touch it. Go find another one. He plays with my daughter. He'll tree bear. He'll tree lion. I have livestock here. He helps me sort hogs. He'll grip hogs so that I can tie them and shuffle them around. He understands to let go on command. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like he booger barks at strangers. He's an 80-pound dog. So when the FedEx guy comes up, and he gets out of his truck, he's a big dog and he's barking at strangers. But then you could come over, I could give you the leash and you guys could go hunting. Like they do everything. And if I had to say specifically what they would add to a hound pack, they could lend themselves to at the end of a race. I think that at stock, without being some, trainer that's fully committed to bringing the absolute best out of these Drahts, if, a houndsman got it, I think out the box, just if you took that puppy, raise it like your hounds and threw them in the pack, they would, on average, lend themselves to finishing a little bit better. At the end, when it's up and you're just trying to close the distance to get them to go up, they're pretty good at that. They're fast and they're hard and they want to put their mouth on it, and they can do that. But then all the other aspects of it, they are not a specialty dog. They are a versatile dog that can do a little bit of everything, and that's what I think they can lend to the hounds.
For the, and I hate to use this term, your typical houndsman.
Which are artists, so to speak. They're great.
Absolutely.
It's not a bad thing. Typical houndsman is not a bad word.
Yeah. And I don't mean that to be, I guess I'm looking at it like, hey, from an Eastern hunter perspective, if all I do is bear hunt and hounds can do what I need them to do, then maybe a Draht's not for me. Maybe I'm getting what I need from my hounds. Mm-hmm. But if you're looking for versatility and maybe a little change of flavor, then the Draht can do that. Plus, retrieve some birds and things like that.
Blood trailing. They're incredible blood trailers, so you can throw them down with your hounds and tree the bear. And then when you shoot the deer that you lose the deer, you can track it up, or the coyotes are getting a little too close. You want something, you made that bad shot on that predator, and now you need to, you don't want to.
They're being used for everything. They're being used for everything. You can use them for decoy dogs, for coyotes. You can use them for blood trackers. You can use them, but I think a lot of times, we take away that specialized. Are we giving up anything when we're trying to take a jack of all trades, master of none out there? Obviously, if I was a coon hunter in the East, I'm going to stick with a coonhound breed if that's my thing. Mm-hmm. But not to say that you couldn't be successful. I always brag about Roxy and the Boxer and Axel. They're a lot of fun to walk down the creek, but if I'm going coon hunting, I already have that standard that's in my mind, and they're never going to fit that bill for me. Mm-hmm. Would you classify a Draht kind of in that same aspect?
That it won't. Yeah, well, it's not going to be the way you think. Like you go through it, you win them, they start sounding off. You get old Sparky out, put him on the track. He barks that long brawl, that beautiful noise that what that means, and he goes off, and you can dump another dog or two to him. Is it going to be that style? Kind of. It's not going to sound the same. Haggett's like, right. It sounds like my belt's slipping, mm-hmm. But the drive's there. There's going to be a little bit different style, but like you can hear the track progress with the Drahts. It's not the same. You can tell how close your dog is, to a coon once they've, they're a seasoned dog. Okay, he's about this far. It's about to tree. Oh, there it is. He's in the tree. Let's go. And you can kind of hear that with the Drahts if you stay focused with it. Now, if you only, tree a coon once or twice a year, no, you're never going to see it come out of there, but if you stay at it, you can kind of hear them. Like in the beginning, it'll just be this real high pitch, hi, and that's him working a cold track. And then once he gets closer, he'll start hammering, a little bit louder. And then when he trees, it's obvious, it's a very quick chop, so you can kind of hear it. I guess what I'm getting at, Chad, is
we're not looking at trying to find the draughts that are going to go out there and win competition coon hunts. I'm just trying to, I wanted to have you on to expose this breed of dog that is extremely versatile, and we don't always look outside of our own little echo chambers. For years and years and years, we've been looking at basically 7 hound breeds to do specific jobs. And what I want to do at the podcast, and I've started adding terrier work and now draughts and things like that. There's other options out there. If you're adventurous, you go into it with an open mind that you're not going to get hound characteristics and maybe even a lot of the same types of performance there, but they are available to do a very good job and do solid work for you. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, that'd be accurate. If I heard somebody say, "Hey, I'm doing great work with my hounds. We're treeing bear and lion." But I might want to get into shooting a few ducks, or it'd be cool if I had a blood trailing dog, or hey, I've always wanted to point. I got some pheasants around here, and I'd like to. That's when I would say, hey, you need to get one of these draughts. You can hunt with your hounds, and you can go do some of those other things. Now, I'm not going to lie and say that if you want your dog, like for example, Haggis does all these things. It's work. They have to be proficient at all these things. They don't just do it all. They can do it all, but they don't just do it all without training. But if they wanted something that, like, okay, we can go tree a bear and a lion, and then, maybe tomorrow go get after them pheasants. When I got my buddies down, we want to go shoot some pheasants. That's a dog you can do both with. If you just want the absolute best, all you want to do is tree bear and lion, you might still have fun with it, but I'm not going to go out of my way and say, you need this. I would say the draughts are there for the guys that, maybe want to look at something a little different, or want to do this, have a dog that they could do this, and then maybe go do a little bit of that. And that's one of the reasons I like them so much. I got buddies that are center dog people, and they, all they do is game birds, like quail, chucker, pheasants, grouse. And they're just with that 24/7. And any day I can go with them, and they're going to help put me on game, and we're going to have a blast. And then my other friends, every single day that it's in season, they're out there trying to chase a bear or a lion. And I have a setter or two, and I have, 10 hound dogs. And if I'm going with the hound people, I'll bring my hound dogs, and I'll bring my Draht Haggis, And if I'm, if I'm going to go out there and point game birds with, like some of my good buddies, like Tyler Sabin, UB Giverson, these are like big time game bird hunters that I hunt with on a regular basis. And I can go down and I can put that dog down with them too. So that's what I would say is really neat about them. If you want something to decoy a coyote with and then go run some hounds, or you want to retrieve some ducks and then go do it, you want a blood trail, you want to put, find that elk and then do it. That's what they're for to me.
Wow. That sounds like an amazing animal. And I'm glad you took time to talk to us today. We're gonna have to wrap this one up. I hope we'll talk after the show and think about some other things to talk about. But yeah, I'm glad you came on to talk about Drahthaar.
Drahthaars. Yeah.
Yeah. Drahthaar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Good deal, man. Chad, thanks so much for your time. And, I know we just scratched the surface. A lot of times when we have great guests on, the first episode is more or less, hey, this is Chad. He was fun. We need to talk to him some more, and we'll rope you into coming back and doing it some more.
Yeah, without a doubt. I would say I've been on Facebook for a little while. I'm just getting into the Instagram. One of my ranch hands have been beating me over the head with a hammer, trying to get me to do the Instagram thing for a little while to get some exposure, because we do the animal training for a living. So it's not like you can open a phone book and look for some of these things. You can Google animal trainers, but more than some other fields, you got to see what you do to be worth it, So give me a little bit of time. I'm getting the Instagram thing going. I got albums and Facebook that are deep with all the stuff that we were kind of talking about with the falconry, the dogs, the hounds, the terrier games, whatever you can dream of, so it's all there. Check us out. But yeah, I love being on. I can talk too much about dogs. I'm sure I got away a few times off in the weeds.
That's what this show's all about, man. But that's what we're supposed to be doing.
I'm sure glad you had me on, and
you bet.
I'd like to come back. So if you guys got anything else you want to talk about.
Yeah. All right. Well, sounds good, Chad. And until we talk again, you follow your hounds and I'll follow mine.
Yes, sir. Take it easy.